Thanks for that, Zoom. Super excited for Indira to kind of walk us through how to rock the technical interview. So Indira is she's been a mentor, Collab Lab a couple of times. Yeah, I think let's see, did you do this session last time? No, you didn't. This is new. So, okay, all right. But I'm excited to see what you have. Your slides are very pretty already, so that's cool. But yeah, I'll let you take it away. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit, you can.
So hi, everyone. My name is Indira. I'm a software developer currently at Shopify, around 8 years of experience. And I'm going to be walking you through how to rock the technical interview today. So a brief agenda. The first topic is how to look good for your interview. Then how to rock your technical interview. The behavioral within your technical interview, because they're always evaluating you behaviorally, and how you're also interviewing the company. So how to look good for your interview. Make sure that you have good lighting. So in my previous location, before I moved, I would just turn on a lamp right next to me, because I don't have a ring or anything like that, but just try to make yourself look better. Have a clean background. So at some point, my husband had a clear background and I had a bed behind me. So I was whenever I'm interviewing, I need your spot, just so it's clear. But anyways, if you have a bed, it's fine. Even interviewers will sometimes have a bed behind them. Just make sure that you made the bed that day, closed all the doors behind you, basically. There's up from head to toe. Now that we are remote, we tend to think you only need to dress from the waist up, but it helps with your confidence, knowing that you're fully dressed, and if anything comes up, you have the ability to walk away, and you're not scared of oh, I didn't wear my pants. Make sure that your computer is charged or is plugged in, your camera is working, your headphones are working. Make sure to wear headphones, and also let your family know. You don't want people walking behind you while you're interviewing, unless it's an emergency. So most of the time they will just stay away, but let them know ahead of time. And avoid any distractions, mute your phone, leave it in another room. Actually, no, don't leave it in another room, just mute it. Because I did have an instance where people were in different, someone didn't know they had to join the Google Meet meeting, and they were calling me on the phone. And I was basically waiting for them to show up in the same link where everyone was showing up. But yeah, just be aware of it. And even when you have those interviews that are all day, try to get information from your recruiter, who's going to be your coordinator, because they will give you their phone number in case you have any issues, if someone is not showing up on time, or if anything happened, they can coordinate with you throughout the day to make sure that everything goes smoothly. Second part is rocking your technical interview, and I have here 5 steps. The first one is going to be understand the questions, brainstorm ideas, write pseudocode, write your solution, and test your solution. I'm going to go step by step on these ones. So understand the questions. Sometimes the questions that are given to you are intentionally vague. The reason for this is because in real life, the problems that you're presented with may be vague, and one of the abilities you need to have is ask questions. Sometimes you won't have all the questions immediately, but whatever you can think of, as soon as the question is given to you, ask them. You can also ask for an example input and output. Sometimes they will give you 1 or 2, but even then, come up with your own example. Suggest one, just to make sure that you understand the question, and also think about edge cases. It's good to have those clear, and then if they only give you the example verbally, write it down. Because you want to make sure after you've written your code that you test for the examples they gave you and the examples that you're suggesting. So I'm gonna walk through like one very common question that is called twosome. And this question is given a list of numbers and a target number k, return whether any two numbers in your list add up to k. So when they give you this question, you can start like asking follow-ups, right? So like, can the same number be repeated? If you have a list of 1, 5, and 2, and k equals to 4, 2 plus 2 equals to 4, right? Is that a valid case? Or like 1 times 4. If you add 1 4 times, it adds up to k. Most of the time in this question, they don't allow duplicates. And like if you had 2 twice in your list, it will be acceptable. You can also ask, can there be duplicates in the list? What's the behavior if there are duplicates in the list? Another question is, will this list be sorted, right? This particular question has multiple solutions. Two of the most efficient ones, one, it's better in space, it's optimized for space, and the other one is optimized for running time. But it requires more space, basically. So asking that will help you orient on your solution where you want to go. Another one is, what should be the output, right? It could be like, yes, there are two numbers, or false, there are not two numbers that add up to that. It could be, what are the numbers that add up to the target, or the indexes of the in your original list that add up to the target. So for this one, for the example that I have, it's going to be, I think I did the solution with the numbers that add up to your target. So like, what are the two numbers in your list? After that, you want to start brainstorming ideas. It's important to remember that a solution is still a solution. So if it solves the problem, it's better than not solving the problem at all. Yes, there may be more efficient solutions that you can work through your interview to get there. But like, for instance, this problem, the most basic solution, it's a double for loop, right? It's slow, it uses but like at the end, you can find an answer for it. Again, think about the trade-offs between space and runtime. What do you want to optimize for in your solution? And another thing, it's like, when you study and you prepare for your interviews, you're gonna get familiar with algorithms and with different data structures and what they're better for, right? So like, go in your mind to the ones that you remember, or like also think out loud, like, oh, the different data structures are heaps, maps, sets, and then like, what would you use them for, right? So like, a map is fast because you can get a key and a value in all one time, right? That's the benefit of it. Like, the set cannot have any duplicate numbers. So if you think through like your data structures, you're sharing that you have knowledge in data structures, even if they are not a good match for the problem you have at hand. You're like demonstrating your knowledge, and then you eventually say, oh, this one, it's going to be the right data structure for this problem. And make sure to think out loud. It's hard. It's a hard skill. It takes time to develop it. And that's exactly why one of the things that we suggest is for you to do like a prompt interview with another collabie. So you practice that skill, because it gets easier with time. After this, you want to write pseudocode. Or like, this can be pseudocode, it can be comments of like the steps that you want to use. And the main goal of this is for you to remember what solution you agreed on, what solution you're gonna be implementing. Because like, maybe at the beginning you're thinking about like, oh, there's this edge case that I need to make sure that I solve, and I think it's around, this is the idea that I want to address here. But while you're writing the code, you might forget about that you already mentioned. So like, if you write it down, the comment is there to like remind you of that. Next, write your solution, and remember to talk while you're coding. So for this problem, there are two possible solutions. There are more, but these are two of the best ones. So on the left, it's sorting, right? So you sort all your numbers sorry. You sort your numbers, and then you're gonna use a 2-pointer strategy. And how that works is that since your numbers are already sorted, you will start at the two edges of your array with your smaller number and your higher number, and you will check if those two numbers are your target. If those two numbers are your target, you can return the numbers or the indexes depending on who is asking you what of like what's the target output of that. If those two numbers don't add up to the target, if the sum is less, it means that you should increase your lower number. So for example, if you have two plus wait, let's see. If your target number is 15 and your numbers add up to lower than the target, there is no way for you to like get to your target number if you move the right one. So you need to increase your left pointer. Inversely, like if you already over your target, you will move your right index, your J index. This solution doesn't use any additional space, and you can basically sort in place your array. Another solution is with a map. You require additional space for the map. And in this solution, what you do is like you create a map, and in it you will store the number that you found and the index where you found it. And each time you go to a new number, you will check if target minus the number that you're currently on, if it exists. If it exists, it means that there is a combination that adds up to your target number, and you can return there. If not, you add it to your map. And by the end of your for loop, if you haven't found anything, you can say, hey, it doesn't exist. But these two solutions, like they both work, but you need to be aware of what's the answer. I think they both work for when you have to return true or false. But when you sort, it might be harder for you to return the indexes of the numbers, right? Because you lose the indexes of where each number was when you sorted them. But you can find like what were the numbers that add up to that. So after you've written your code, use the examples that your interviewer provided and the ones that you created, and add new tests if you needed them, and think of probable errors. So sometimes you think, I'm not sure if this one is less than or equal, or if I should start at 0 or 1. Do I need to stop my loop 2 numbers before? That type of thing. If you know about it, or like if you're unsure about something, make sure to write like a comment like, hey, I'm not sure here if this is gonna be off by 1. So while you're texting your code, you can look at it closer, and you might be able to you will be able to change your code to be able to basically pass those tests that you created for yourself. There are 2 strategies for testing your solution. The first one is writing comments. So each time you go line by line, and you write the value for that variable at that line. So the first time that you go to this line, it's an empty map, right? I have here like some numbers on the target. So first, like here I could have added I equals to 0, because that's gonna be my first value. And then you do scene that get target. I already know that target it's 9. That doesn't change. But nums I, since it's 0, it's gonna be 2. 9 minus 2, it's 7. So this is gonna be false the first time around. So since it's false, I go into my else block and I will add into my map 2 map to the 0. Then you go and you increase I equals to 1. In this case, it's going to be 9 minus 7, which is equal to 2. So this is going to evaluate to true. And then you can add here like your response, which is going to be 0, 1. Another way to do this is with a table. I remember the first time someone talked to me about this and I was like, this makes so much sense. Why didn't I know about it? And you basically outline all your variables in the top. And you go through your code line by one and you start filling them up. So like my I, it's gonna be 0 at the beginning. My numbers at 0, it's gonna be 2. K minus nums I is gonna be 9 minus 2, which is 7. I add this value. My map is empty, right? So I know that 7, I couldn't find it. That basically you talked through that you couldn't find 7 in your map. But like there's no way to actually like store it here, or like you can add a new column saying like whether you found it or not. Then the next step is you actually are gonna add that 2 into your map, and that results in this 2 map to 0 here. You increase your I value. Now your number side, you evaluate it to 7. You check for 2. You see that it's actually on your map. So like in the next step, you add your output. It's gonna be 0, 1. And this table basically, it's easy for you to prove that it's doing what you want it to do. In some interviews, you're able to run the code, but not in all of them. So you want to be able to outline that it works, whether or not you have that functionality. If you do have the ability to run your code at this point, go ahead and like run it, but make sure that you first walk your interviewer through every line through an example, so they know that you know what you're doing. So we also have a behavioral interview, but in your technical interview, the questions that tend to be asked are pretty common, are around like scenarios of conflict or difficult situations that you've had to deal with. If you look for Amazon leadership principle questions, those are like the more comprehensive list. And like, if you have those scenarios like in mind, it will be easier for you to talk through them. There is a STAR method that is used to like answer these type of questions, where you talk about a situation, a task, an action, and a result. I will talk in the next slide about an example. I remember that like maybe you didn't do the right thing at that time. So you can also add like, oh, at that point I did this, but today I will do something else because I've learned that this other thing is important and it's how I should have handled that situation. It demonstrates that you're growing as a person and like you would do things differently. So an example that I thought about for speaking about the STAR method is if they ask you about like a skill that you don't have and you're looking at improving. So for example, I realized that like I was too scared to talk in public, at least in a work setting. So as a task, or like I started thinking, what can I do about this, right? And then I realized that like, oh, there are some nonprofits, like for example, the Collab Lab, where I can volunteer and practice, right, in a lower stakes setting. And the action that I took is I volunteer with the Collab Lab as a mentor. I volunteer at another organization teaching after school for like underprivileged students. you teach them programming, and like that helps me build confidence in myself. You actually realize like, oh, when you're dealing with like very junior people, that like, oh, I actually know something, I have something to share with other people, right? So that's the action that I took, and as a result, I'm more confident in myself. And like at work, I can use this skill as like when there are interns, I can step up and say, hey, I've mentored students in these other settings, can I be a mentor for the interns? And that helps you show up at work with an additional skill that you developed. And lastly, remember that you are interviewing the company too. So have questions prepared for the end of the interview. And this can be specific to you, to what's important to you, right? So for me, it's important that I keep growing in my job, right? That I keep learning new stuff. So I would ask like, what have you learned in the last year? Do you attend any conference regularly? Which conferences are those? Or like, are there any podcasts that you listen to that help you in your craft? What is an interesting problem that you have solved? Something that you're proud of or have learned a lot from, like at this company where you're at. Other things are more of like work-life balance, right? So how did the company handle the pandemic? What are your hours? And when you ask questions like that specific to the person, not like, oh, what are the hours of the company? They might give you like a generic answer. But when you said, hey, what are the hours that you work regularly? They will give you like a more accurate representation of what that's really like. So something that I tend to be curious about is like, how is work assigned? How do you know what you're gonna be working for the next couple of weeks? Do you have regular one-on-ones? Like, who's your tech lead versus who's your manager? Are they the same person? Are they separate? And when was the last time you took a vacation? It indicates whether or not people feel free to take vacations or not. So yeah, this is like the content of my presentations. Do you guys have any questions? We can discuss more.
Thanks, Indira. That was great. I know there are probably places where people had questions, and if you remember back to those spots, is there anything anyone wanted to ask? I was in the chat kind of trying to clarify a couple things. Like there's, like I think some people may not be super up on space and time and what those things mean in this context. Can you maybe explain that a little bit?
Okay. Let me go back to this one. So when you have an array, as in the right, we have the one that is optimal. It uses more space and it spends less time. And the reason for that, it's like when you have nums is your input, right? And that is in a space in your memory in the computer. But when you create a new variable, like this map in scene, this map, it's gonna have to be created in a different place in memory. So that's taking up more space. And this gives you the benefit that like you're only going through your for loop once. So you're optimizing for time. It means like it's linear time. So you're only gonna visit each of the elements in nums once. Operations in a map tend to be O1. And what that means is that the map has a mechanism of knowing in what location of the map this number should be, right? So like in the example we used, like it was 2, the first number. So the map calculates in a set amount of time where 2 is, and then it goes to that location and it verifies whether it is there or not in a super fast amount of time. If you had an array, basically you have to go through the whole array to make sure if the number is in there or not. So in this case, like you can use up to the length of the numbers of extra space, but the time that it will take you to evaluate this solution, it will be Also the length of your numbers. On the other hand, you have this solution, which is it doesn't use the extra space that it uses in memory. It's constant, and what that means is like instead of you needed however many numbers there are to be stored in a new location, you only need to store two things, which are the 2 pointers for I and J. And when things are like so little, they tend to be like they get approximated as constant. So if you had 100 numbers in this solution, you need 100 extra spaces in your memory to store all the numbers into the map. In this case, you only need 2 additional locations in memory to store I and store J. But this solution is slower in time because the sorting algorithms they take n log n time, which is higher than of n. So that's why this one is considered like it's optimized for space because you don't use any extra memory. But the time it takes to do the sorting, it's slower or it's more time.
That makes sense to people? Was I the only one who benefited from that clarification? There's a question in the chat from Caitlin. So I've heard the advice that you should try the inelegant brute force solution first and then optimize if time allows. And the reasoning being that interviewers will often ask you to optimize anyway. So if you optimize up front, it makes it more difficult when you're asked to further optimize. Is that good advice?
So what tends to happen in interviews is that at some point they're asking you the same questions. My advice is like at the end of each interview, whether or not like you found a solution, go look that question up. And you're gonna learn what's the more optimal solution. If you already know the optimal solution for a question, use it from the beginning. You don't need to do a brute force solution if you know a better one. Also, it's important to have a discussion with your interviewer and saying what you're thinking, right? If you know the brute force solution, you can say, hey, this is the brute force solution, and this is another solution that I thought of. And you ask, which one do you want me to implement? Which path do you want me to go here? And that will help you where to go. Because they also know if they're going to ask you a follow-up question, which one would have you at a better place.
I really like the kind of the implication there, which is to kind of make it more of a conversation. You know, it's not, here's a problem and you need to just kind of figure it out and be silent until you have a solution. Like you should be talking to the interviewers. And that actually helps them understand your thought process too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that applies even if you don't know the better solution. I think a really great approach is if you look at the problem and you can immediately see what the brute force solution is, you can say like, oh, I think, maybe the naive approach would be to do it this way, but I suspect there's a better way. Give me a moment, and then do a little bit of brainstorming to see if you can spot something better. And if you don't find anything better, it's fine. That's fine. Do the brute force one. That's totally cool. But give yourself like a minute or two to see if you can find a better one.
Yeah, and like when questions are like in a phone interview, if like it's completely over the phone, make sure you write everything. Every single detail that they're giving you, make sure that you write it before you write a solution, so you take everything into account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good advice. Shoot, there was something else I was going to say. Can't remember what it was.
One way to recognize those brute force solutions, kind of the naive ones, is anytime you've got a nested loop where you're looping over everything, that's a really common thing that will work, but there's usually a better way. So those are the sort of solutions where I look at it like, here's one way we could do it. So they know that that's the way you could do it. But then that would be when I'd spend a minute or two on something better. If you see something where you can just do it in a single pass over the data, that's always good.
Yep.
Yeah, the ideal solution is always like a single pass. Then another solution is if you can split your space one at a time, like split the solution space by half on each iteration.
These, I mean, the kind of the general process you talked about too, that would apply to, like, if you were asked to, like code a simple nav, like, site navigation or something like that, like you could still do the same thing of like, make sure you understand the problem, talk through your approach, like some of those steps that you outlined, right? It doesn't just apply to these kind of algorithm questions.
Yeah, like, can you use libraries, right? So
yeah,
all
right.
the questions that come to mind.
Like import material UI done, right? What are the questions that people have? There was something else that I was gonna say, but I can't remember it for the life of me. So you all have done interviews. Like, does this sound like something that would have been helpful, or did you do something similar in your interviews? Like, what's been your experience of these technical interviews when you've done them? Like, Caitlin, you have a job. You must have done a technical interview.
Yeah, I was telling Graham, when I do technical interviews, all my technical knowledge just bleeds out of my head. So my experience is just like kind of panicking. But I think the more you practice, it's more muscle memory than anything. So you don't have to actually remember anything. It's more just automatic. So I do think that practicing a lot helps, but I could still use more practice.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of what I was going to say, which is that, you feel this pressure in an interview, and anytime there's a silence, it feels like it's dragging on forever, right? And it's actually, the interviewer is probably not experiencing it that way. You are, because you're the one under pressure. So it is okay for you to say, like, I just need a second to kind of get my thoughts together here. Dead space, that's totally fine. The other thing, like with that panic feeling, like having a system, PDAC, or kind of what Indira has outlined or whatever, just having a system in place that you're comfortable with, I think helps a lot to reduce the panic. It's like, okay, I just work through the steps and I'll get there, kind of have that confidence.
Yeah. Another thing that I realized is, like, sometimes you have to spend money to get better at interviews. Like, if you want to, like, something that really helped me was, like, I got like a fellowship at interviewing.io, I think it was called. And it basically gave me like free practice interviews with developers who were like mostly at Snapchat. And most of the things that I shared were like the feedback they would give me at the end of each of these interviews. And I was like, oh, I can use some of this. And it's not like you need to do everything, but the more that you do, the better you look during the interview, right? So for example, I would remember some of the things in one interview, but not the other, but like each of them like helped together, like to make me look better than I would have before. And like that practice talking to someone, talking to your code, it's one of the hardest things. And I also use like educative.io, like I paid for a yearly membership, and like the way that they have structured questions in like the grok in the interview, basically the backend interview, it's like they give you like 12 patterns, and those patterns tend to come up in the interviews that you actually show up on, even if it's not the exact same questions. Once you know a pattern, like, hey, this is gonna be a breadth first search thing, right? So I already know that. And just having that knowledge of like, this is the solution for this question, like takes so much pressure out of you, because you're like, I know I'm gonna get somewhere because I know the general idea. I might be off by one here, I may have a symbol flipped, but I'm gonna be able to spot this when I run through my solution line by line. But the overall thing, it's fine.
One thing that might be worth bearing in mind too is that folks who are interviewing, especially for roles that are open to early career engineers, they have interviewed so many people who are so nervous. Like, it's totally normal. Everybody is nervous when they go in for a job interview, and they are going to be completely used to seeing folks that are having some stress and going through that. So don't feel like you're the only one who would panic. Like, everybody does. It's totally okay.
Yeah, 100%. There's kind of a trend lately to have people, instead of like, here's a problem, solve this problem, to have people actually just talk through some code that they've written. So I don't know if like how you would approach that, Indira. Like, you have other strategies for that kind of situation, like show us a PR that you did or some code that you wrote and explain it.
Yeah, I've had like technical deep dives, and how I prepare is like I would write slides, whether or not I use them. It helps me know what are the things that I want to mention. Just talk through like what was the hard problem in this thing that you were addressing. What did you learn, or like how did you learn it? So, for example, one that I've talked about was okay. I had like a token that expired every 6 to 8 minutes, and I had to renew it between 6 and 8 minutes. Like, if it was at some other point, it would like basically not allow me to do it. And I was using set interval, right? And it will eventually break. Like, we didn't know for a while why was it breaking, and at some point, like, because I saw someone else doing like chained set timeouts instead of set interval. That helped me realize I should be using chain set timeouts. Why? Because I don't know how long my program is taking to renew the token, going to the backend and get a new one. And at some point, that delay is causing me to do it either too early or too late, because all that the set interval is doing, it's putting it in the stack. It doesn't know when it's going to be executed. So for my use case, even though both set interval and chain set timeouts look like they should both work, one works better than the other. So like, practice telling it to a friend, to a significant other, someone you have around who can ask you questions, because you don't know what are the questions that they you rubber duck. But like, basically try talking it through with someone that might be able to understand you or not. The more you say something, the more confident you sound. The easier it is for you to say it and explain it. But yeah, I also had like slides of like, oh, this was the problem that we were doing, right? This is how I approach it. This is how I came to the solution.
I love that idea of making slides, because it kind of forces you to take like just concept by concept and like break it down, you know. Hi, Stacy. So that's a great idea. We were just talking, Stacy. Actually, Stacy, you have experience with this. So
What is it?
The type of interview where you're asked to, you know, walk the interviewers through code that you've written or PRs that you've done, like how you approach that.
In our last meeting too, what was the topic for our last meeting? I don't remember, but one of the most important things I think for that process is to make sure that you have your documentation in place from when you wrote the code initially. So have good PRs, good comments in the code if you're into that, things that can jog your memory about why you did things a certain way. And I might follow up too with what you would do to improve it. Like, what are some things you can do to improve it? And if you follow some of the things we've talked about at Collab Lab, creating issues for things that you want to do, feature requests for things you want to add to it, you'll have a lot to talk about in those situations. So yeah, those are fun because you wrote the code and you like usually had a lot of time to get familiar with it. Whereas like, if it's just a technical interview that you did a take home for, you're like, yeah, I looked at this for like 2 hours. That was it. I didn't really dig. So you have a lot more context around those other things.
Good job. Way to jump into the meeting and add value.
Dude, that's it? I don't know. What are we talking about?
Any other questions that people have? Okay.
Have any of you done a technical interview yet?
Yeah, we talked about that already.
Okay, were they like bad? Were they like hard? Were they really awesome? trying to get a vibe for like, yeah, currents like, yeah, curious.
Yeah, I had mixed experiences. The best one that I had was like, it was a take home and then like a code review style technical, not like problem solving ones kind of freak me out and I forget all of my structures and all of the algorithms that I've been studying. So I like the ones where it's like I can leave notes for myself about what I did and this is what I want to talk about and highlight. I think those are the ones that are better for me.
For sure.
I've done like one or two, but like one that really sticks to my mind is it was a take home, and then the follow up to that was the second part of the technical thing, where they would ask you to add to the take home challenge. And what I really loved about that was they were actually collaborating with me.
Oh, that's nice.
Like, which is kind of great. Not like fully, but like it was like, okay, I don't think like I was taught, and I think one of the great things about talking through your code is then they can be like, actually, it's not a for each. You want to use this loop because we understand what you're trying to do. And in any other scenario, when you're not in a pressure situation, like you would have done it this way. We understand that. So I think that's great, and I think that's one of the benefits of talking.
Totally.
I also like take homes more than the other ones. And another thing, like when you have like a lot of interviews and then like you don't get jobs, like the way that I approach it is don't think of success of getting the job. It's like, did you do better than last time? Like, would you do like, how can I use this to learn so that the next time I'm gonna do like better in the following one? It was like an opportunity for me to actually practice. I had a chance of get a job, but like at the same time, you're getting better on your interviewing skills. Because unfortunately in software development, interviewing skills and the actual job are a little bit different. There are two different skill set, and you're not practicing the interviewing all the time. Sometimes you're at a job and you're like, I'm doing my job. I don't want to be learning the interviewing things. I want to do this right now.
Yeah, it's a whole skill set unto itself.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point. And I would even go a little further. Even if you don't get the job, that doesn't mean you didn't do well. Usually, just the way the math works out, there are typically a fairly large number of people I would love to hire, but you can only hire, the one or the four, however many it is. So you could have done great, but someone else also did great, and you just went the other way. But yeah.
I thought I might just jump in here and mention a third type of interview that I haven't heard mentioned yet. It was actually for my most recent interview for my current job. The last one was a technical interview, and our boss is very much against the classic technical interview where you're either like an onboard code quiz or a large take-home assignment. He finds that either it's not really valuable at finding out how someone performs in the job, or it's just a huge burden for interviewees and therefore not really worth doing. So it was really interesting because the technical interview was less of a, hey, here's a question, give me an answer, more, let's go through all the different things that you've worked on in your career, and let's go in depth and detail talking about the technical requirements, your process, what your thoughts were, is there any code that we can explore and walk through a little bit together? But it wasn't, again, that quiz, it was more, hey, let's have a conversation about your technical skills. And I had a much better understanding, A, of their work, but also I think was able to show off my understanding and my abilities in a much better way than, perhaps getting the question I happen to know the answer to versus another one. So I really appreciate that. And that is a different type of interview that I at least had compared to the classical comp types.
I love that kind of interview too. I have found that for early career engineers, it can be challenging because you don't necessarily have a lot of stuff on your resume yet that you can dig into. At the program that I run, we've tried to do something similar where we just say, pick any technical topic you want. It doesn't even have to be computers as long as it's technical somehow. And just come in and explain it to us. And so we're really going for like, can you explain things clearly? Can you communicate effectively, sort of thing. But trying to replicate a similar vibe without necessarily having a whole lot of projects on your resume that you can dig through in great detail.
Yeah, I like that, John, because the other thing, and that's like the way you're describing it, Graham, sounds great for a certain set of people, and then there are people who maybe they work at a place where all the code is proprietary. They can't show it, you know. So in that case, maybe you would give them the option of doing a take home or showing code that they worked on, or they may just be able to like kind of talk through it at a high level without showing code or something too. But in general, I love that approach. Yeah.
I've never heard of that one, but a thought that I have about it is like if someone asked me about my first and my second job, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's too long ago, right?
Yeah. I'm like, I may be able to talk about like one challenging thing I did at that job, because that's the story that I had to repeat, you know, like that's the story that I use for my interviews of like, what's something challenging that you've done. I can't pinpoint to that story of the second job. The first one, I have nothing. But like, it tends to get harder to like talk about everything that you've done, because you're like, okay, you can talk about challenging things that you repeated over time, that you told the story over and over again. But like what the day-to-day job was, like it gets harder as time goes by, at least in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. I guess I should clarify that we don't say like, tell me about everything you've ever done. We'll, for those more senior positions, I'll say, pick something really cool on your resume and just explain that project to me. So you get to pick whatever it is. So it's the story that you've told 100 times if you've got one of those, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a, here's a pop quiz about that thing on your resume from 6 years ago. Or just, hey, here's a concept, tell me about it.
That makes sense. Cool. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. So I think we might wrap this one up. At the top of the hour, we're gonna have another session where I'm gonna interview Alejandro, one of our mentors, and John's gonna interview Indira. And you're gonna get to see how professional software developers answer some of these questions. It should be a lot of fun. Not stressful for me because I'm on the interviewing side, but.
Hey, Alejandro did get the promotion from the last time, so.
That's true. Oh, that's right. Oh, good memory. Yeah, he sure did.
I love it. This is
Cool.
one of my favorite sessions we do.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Cool. All right, we'll see you in 11 minutes.
See you then. Bye.
All right, take care, everybody.